The early 1950s was a peculiar period for the Japanese. The war had just ended, and with all the havoc caused by their enemies, they were trying to rebuild. And in that path of rebuilding came one of the most unlikely transmissions. Yamaha going from producing musical instruments to producing motorcycles. It seemed crazy at first, and many snickered at the idea, because how could you go from producing harmonicas to incredible bikes? Only if they knew that the company would one day become one of the top motorcycle brands in the world. This story follows how a reed organ producing company becomes one of the best motorcycle producers in the world. Sit tight, it's about to be an interesting ride. It all started with a Japanese man named Torakusu Yamaha. Torakusu was born on the 20th of April 1851 in Wakayama, Kai Province, Japan. Being the third son of an astronomer and low-ranking samurai called Konosuke Yamaha, Torakusu's early days were spent buried in books about astronomy and taking martial arts lessons. In those days, if anyone had asked the young Yamaha what he'd become, his clear answer would have been to follow in his father's footsteps. In his 20s, Japanese society witnessed a rapid change as the Meiji Restoration brought about the westernization and introduction of new technologies to the region. Due to his background in astronomy, Torakusu knew about the beauties of technology and was curious to learn more. So he packed his things and left to study watchmaking in Nagasaki. He quickly became an expert in the field, but his thirst for knowledge wasn't quenched, so he began to study medical equipment. It was during this study that a life-changing incident happened. You see, to learn to repair medical equipment, he had to leave Nagasaki for Hamamatsu. Hamamatsu was a small town, and despite having experts in the repair of medical equipment residing there, it wasn't a business that would bring food to the table. So he juggled between fixing watches, repairing medical equipment, and serving as a rickshaw man for a hospital director just to make ends meet. So he became well known for being the go-to person for little technical repairs. So it's no surprise that when a local primary school's reed organ got broken, Torakusu was the one they called to help fix it. You should know that the young man knew nothing about the instrument, but never one to back down from a challenge. He found out the cause of the problem and fixed it. However, his fixing of the musical equipment wasn't a one-off thing, because the beauty and intricacies of it all won his heart. And in that moment, Torakusu knew what he wanted to do with his life. Soon enough, Torakusu set up a project to produce the first ever Japanese-made reed organ. He sourced for funds and searched for people with similar interests, and 2 months later it was produced. Knowing that the only people that could properly assess the instrument were the professors at the Music Institute, he slung his creation over his shoulder and crossed mountains to get it there. At first, everything was wrong with his equipment. The tune was off and the music it produced was bland, but after a month of attending lectures about the theories of music, he was able to make the necessary changes. When he produced the second reed organ, everyone affirmed that it was as good as the imported ones. That very year, 1887, the young man founded Nippon Gaki Company Limited, and within 5 years, it was renowned for producing several musical instruments, xylophones, harmonicas, and even pianos. As years passed, the company spread its tentacles to the international market, and it seemed like nothing could go wrong. But then, Second World War came and everything changed. In 1916, during World War I, Torakusu suffered a major illness which eventually led to his death. Although the company was shaken by his death, it didn't have any negative effect on the sales or the production of the musical instrument. In fact, the company continued to thrive under the rule of Chiyomaru Amano and those who came after him. But then World War II came, and the company was enlisted by the Japanese government to make use of their resources to produce propellers, fuel tanks, and wing parts for Zero fighter planes. This made them a target of several attacks, and in 1945, the company had to put the production of their instruments on hold. As the war progressed, the company suffered greatly, pouring resources into helping the Japanese government and having their facilities bombed. By the time the war came to an end, only one Nippon Gaki factory was standing, and they barely had any assembly line or resources left, but that didn't diminish their spirits. After the war, the company sought financial assistance from the United States, and it was granted, Within 2 months of receiving the funds, they resumed the production of harmonicas and xylophones. 6 months later, organs, accordions, tube horns, and guitars from the company were also back in the market. And in 1947, when the Allied powers approved civilian trade, the company began to export again. Despite the steady progress they were making after the war, it was evident that it would take more than a lot to get back to what they used to be before the catastrophic war. So the chairman at the time, Junichi Kawakami, took a bold step that changed the company's direction forever. Junichi was born in Hamakita, Japan in 1912, showing that he was only a child when Torokusu died. He graduated from the Takachiho College of Commerce, which meant he had no background in music or technology, but he joined the Nippon Gaki Company with his father, Kaiichi Kawakami, who was the president in 1927. His ingenuity and smartness got him to quickly learn what the company was all about, and when his father stepped down in 1950, he was good enough to take over as the president. After World War II, the company didn't sell off their wartime production machinery, and this got Kawakami thinking of what else they could use it for. They didn't want to go into the production of war machineries, so that was off the table. Mind you, in 1948, another Japanese company, Honda, produced its first bike, and it was an instant hit. Everyone wanted the comfort it provided, so Kawakami decided to take a page from Honda's playbook and produce a motorcycle using the resources available. First, the motorcycle division was created, and then in 1955, the first Yamaha motorcycle was produced. The YA1, also known as the Red Dragonfly, was named in honor of the founder, and this bad boy was indeed a dragon. It was a 125cc single-cylinder 2-stroke street bike that got its design inspiration from the German DKW RT125. The YA1 wasn't a joke, as it was a competitive success from the very beginning. It won not only the 125cc class in the Mount Fuji Ascent, but also crushed its opponents in the All Japan Autobike Endurance Road Race by taking all the podiums that same year. That early success in racing made everyone know Yamaha was coming to play a tune every other Japanese motorcycle manufacturer would want to dance to. In 1956, Yamaha decided to test its strength by competing internationally in the Catalina Grand Prix. And again, the YA1 took everyone by surprise by emerging 6th. Although it wasn't a podium position, it was outstanding because it meant the bike could compete well internationally. The next year, the YA1 was followed by the YA2, another 125cc 2-stroke, but with a much improved frame and suspension. That same year, the YD1 was released. It shared many similarities with the YA2, but came with a 250cc 2-stroke twin-cylinder engine, which was a more powerful motor. The performance version of the bike, the YDS1, featured a 250cc 2-stroke twin engine in a double down-tube cradle frame and a 5-speed transmission, the first ever in a Japanese motorcycle. The incredible success of these motorcycles led to the founding of Yamaha Motor Co. Limited in 1959. The 1960s was an incredible period for Yamaha. It witnessed immense sales and struggled severely with production. Sales were booming and workers at the assembly plants had to work overtime to meet up with the orders. But it was a bittersweet experience as many of them didn't know much about the production of bikes due to the fact that they were originally Nippon Gaki workers. One particular aspect they struggled with was casting. There were a lot of trials and errors. They were pouring lots of resources into learning of the art, but it wasn't yielding the desired results. However, the determination to produce all parts of their motorbike kept them good, and soon everything was just as Kawakami hoped for. In 1963, they had their first victory in an international competition. It was the 250cc class of the Belgian GP. This was a great boost in morale and made everyone work extra hard. So, with the astounding success in Japan and incredible performance at international races, the automobile company decided to set up subsidiaries abroad, and it started with Thailand in 1964, then the Netherlands 4 years later. In 1965, the 305cc twin-stroke twin, the flagship of the company's lineup, was released. It came with an auto-lube system and a separate oil supply which directly put in the oil into the gasoline before combustion, which was revolutionary at the time because drivers of bikes with 2-stroke engines had to pre-mix oil into gasoline before filling the gas tank. In 1967, a larger displacement model, the 350cc 2-stroke twin R1, was added to the lineup. In 1968, Yamaha decided to try something new by producing a 4-stroke motorcycle, the Yamaha XS1. This bike was simply outstanding. It featured a 650cc 4-stroke twin engine, a larger and a more powerful engine that matched the displacement and performance of the likes of Triumph Bonneville and BSA Gold Star, the famous British bikes of that era. Yamaha continued with the product of a 2-stroke line alongside the 4-stroke line, unlike most Japanese manufacturers at the time, who were following the footsteps of Honda by making a complete shift to 4-stroke machines. And in 1969, it introduced a twin-cylinder RD and single-cylinder RS families that came in several variants, and its piston-ported designs upgraded with a reed valve induction. For a good portion of the 1970s, the RS family was produced by Yamaha and then by Escorts Limited in India. Besides the RD and RS standards, Yamaha also produced small standards like the Yamaha FS1. This bike came with a 5-speed transmission system, stamped steel frames and rotary disc valve motors. They also replaced their Enduro trail bike with the DT models. In 1976, Yamaha thought that it was time to introduce a multi-cylinder 4-stroke of their own, and that was what birthed the XS750 and the XS850. The XS750, which was produced from 1976 to 1981, was a line of bikes that came fitted with a 4-stroke 3-cylinder air-cooled DOHC engine. It had telescopic fork as a front suspension and a swing arm for its rear. It, of course, came with a 5-speed transmission and had a fuel capacity of 17 liters. It was a hit, and 2 years later, the XS1100 was introduced. The XS1100 was a standard bike produced from 1978 to 1983. The bike was powered by an air-cooled 1101cc 4-stroke DOHC inline 4-cylinder engine. This powerful engine was mounted transversely in a duplex cradle frame with a shaft drive, a rear bearing and swing arm suspension, and front transmission of telescopic forks. This bike was heavier and more tour-oriented than many of its rivals, but it won several endurance races regardless. Yamaha also introduced some of its first off-road bikes for off-road racing and recreation in the 70s. Models like the 1974 Yamaha YZ250 were a product of this endeavor. It was also one of the first bikes to get Yamaha's revolutionary monoshock suspension. This single-shock rear suspension was a game changer for dirt bikes. It's no surprise that the YZ250 is still in production. The award-winning XT500 was also a product of the 1970s. Produced from 1975 to 1989, this motorcycle featured a 499cc twin-valve 4-stroke single-cylinder engine. Its half-duplex cradle frame housed the 33-inch seat, 21-inch front wheel, and the 18-inch rear Enduro-style tires. The design of the bike made it fit for both on- and off-road use. This beast won the first big African rallies, starting with the Paris Abidjan Nice and then the Paris Dakar Rally. Even the professional motorbike racer Bengt Aberg competed in the 1977 500cc Motocross World Championship on a modified version of the model and rode the bike to victory in the 500cc Luxembourg Grand Prix. Going into the 1980s, Kawasaki also had to follow the trend of ending the production of road-going 2-stroke bikes altogether. They had made incredible sales from refining the 2-strokes into consumer-friendly 2-stroke triples of 250, 350, 400, 500 and 750cc. Although these bikes were performance-oriented, water-cooled, twin-cylinder machines, structured to achieve excellent performance, consumers' preference and environmental regulation led to the end of its production. The 80s witnessed a significant change in direction for the motorcycle company. Previously, models were built to be versatile and work well in many roles, but during the decade, manufacturers were inclined to produce specialized machines that would do incredibly well in particular niches. So, if a bike was built for performance street riding, it won't perform as well as an enduro and recreational off-road riding bike. Many were initially not very pleased with this change, but the incredible bikes produced as a result won the hearts of many. Let's start with the star of 1981, the XV750 or the Virago 750. This bike was one of the first Japanese cruiser-style motorcycles. Cruisers are like standard motorcycles but have a lower seat height and a more relaxed riding position with legs forward. So, with the XV750, riders were getting a beast of a bike with an air-cooled V-twin 4-stroke engine that provided them with comfort. The RZV500 is another notable bike of the 80s. It was one of the first Repli racers, a replication of Kenny Roberts' competition GP bike. It was fitted with a liquid-cooled two-stroke motor of 500cc displacement in a V4 configuration, along with a perimeter frame and full fairing. In simpler terms, an amazing bike. However, it was nothing compared to the more popular and efficient high-performance model that was introduced in 1985, the great FZ750. This bike was the first motorcycle to have a 5-valve cylinder head, an invention Yamaha later became well known for. Its impressive 750cc 4-stroke inline 4-cylinder engine gave off 77 kilowatts at 10,500 RPM and could reach a top speed of 140 miles per hour. Its suspensions were both telescopic forks, but its engine came with a unique forward inclined cylinder block that resulted in a relatively long wheelbase, which made it perfect as a high-performance bike. This bike was proof that Yamaha engineers knew exactly what they were doing. Another Yamaha performance-oriented bike of the 80s was the Yamaha RX-Z. This model was introduced in 1985 as a two-stroke naked sport bike and shares many similarities with the RX-135 and RD-135. It was initially fitted with a 5-speed transmission and a strong front disc brake rotor with rear drum brakes that made it popular in Malaysia and Singapore. But after a few years on the market, it got its first upgrade. The engine got a 6-speed transmission, a cross-drilled front disc brake rotor, a new instrument panel and handlebar switches. Then in 2004, the design got changed as its headlights were replaced with that on the Yamaha Y125Z, and a catalytic converter which reduced its horsepower to 19 bhp also got installed. Also in 1985, Yamaha got to India as a joint venture. Although it became a 100% subsidiary of Yamaha Motor Company Limited, Japan in 2001, it later formed a partnership with Mitsui to form the India Yamaha Motor Private Limited. Currently, Yamaha is the second top bike brand in India, with incredible models like Aerox 155, Razor Street Rally 125 Fi, and Fascino 125 Fi. Yamaha was always growing with the new trends, as well as setting new paths for others in the motorcycle industry, and this continued well into the 90s. In 1994, Yamaha introduced the launching of Star motorcycles. The idea was to create a US-specific brand that would satisfy the needs of the cruiser motorcycle lovers in the US market. It was a good decision as it led to the production of models such as Star Bolt, Royal Star Tour Deluxe, Royal Star Venue, Strataliner, Roadliner Midnight, Raider, Roadstar, Dragstar, Striker, Warrior, and V-Max. However, for some reason, the brand decided to drop the Star moniker and return to its default name in 2016. In 1998, it promoted a 1000cc 4-cylinder road bike called the YZF R1. This bike was the bike. Since it was fitted with a redesigned model of the Genesis engine, it's no surprise that it was a hit. The redesign featured the raising of the gearbox input shaft to allow the gearbox output shaft to be placed underneath. This compact engine allowed the wheel to be shortened and the center of gravity made optimum. The R1 also got a 41mm KYB upside-down front fork and 300mm semi-floating disc brakes. Unlike many other models, it had an electronic instrument panel with a digital speed readout and a self-diagnosis system. At the time, the R1 was such a sweet ride. Also in 1998 came the YZ400F. One word for this bike was game changer. At the time, motocross was all about the two-stroke engine, and if you mentioned racing with a 4-stroke, people would laugh in your face. But as usual, Yamaha said, "Hold on to your breeches, we don't do basic here," and produced the first 4-stroke motocross machine. When it succeeded in several competitions, they decided it was fit to be taken to the road. And boy, was this bike a beauty! Its sound was also music to bike enthusiasts. This revolutionary bike was powered by a liquid-cooled 399cc 5-valve dual overhead cam dry sump engine, and it gave off more power than the 250cc two-stroke machines. It bore a telescopic front fork suspension and a monocross rear suspension. Although its tank could only take 8 liters, it wasn't a reason for concern because its handling was amazing and reliable. We could continuously sing the bike's praises, but Yamaha didn't stop making incredible bikes. The same year, the Yamaha WR450F was released. This off-road motorcycle was initially fitted with a 400cc liquid-cooled single-cylinder engine, but it was later upgraded to a 450cc engine. The similarities between this bike and the YZ400F and the YZ450F cannot be overlooked, but because it was made for off-road purposes, it bore a significant difference. Imagine a racing version of the YZ450F, detuned a little bit for more controllable power, a softer suspension, a headlight and lighting coil, a kickstand, lower noise specifications, larger radiators and lower emissions. That's exactly what the first generation WR450F was like. Now, it has witnessed several modifications, however its core values remain unchanged. In 2000, the TTR125 was released. This bike was the one that put Yamaha on the map in the category of motorbikes. It came in 3 variants, L, E, and LE, and featured a 124cc 2-valve SOHC air-cooled 4-stroke single engine that gave off a lot of smooth and controllable power. There were some minors with its adjustability and reliability, however the issues were rectified in subsequent models. The next year, the 2001 YZ250F was produced. This motocross model was also the first 4-stroke 250cc bike to be produced. Fitted with a DOHC 4-stroke engine and 5-speed transmission, gave off power to 39 horsepower. This bike was praised for successfully combining the intense power characteristics of a 4-stroke engine with the light handling more common in smaller 125cc 2-stroke motorcycles. In 2007, the company crossed 2 milestones. They produced a Yamaha chip-controlled intake, the first electronic variable intake system on a production bike, and established operations in the Philippines under the name Yamaha Motor Philippines. Although we've mentioned some of the bikes produced by the American cruiser brand Star Motorcycles earlier, we couldn't discuss their features in detail. So now let's talk about the 2013 Yamaha Bolt, otherwise known as the XV950. The bike, which was made available in 3 variants, is powered by a 942cc air-cooled 4-stroke V-twin engine. It features a 41mm telescopic fork with plastic chip guards and 10mm wheel travel on the front and 5-position spring preload adjustable shock absorbers on the rear. Its braking power consists of a 298mm floating disc and a twin piston caliper on the front, and on the rear is a 298mm disc. The combination of these features made the Bolt a good representation of its name. Let's fast forward a few years and talk about the 2018 Star Venture. Now, when the Star Venture was unveiled in 2017, many people were skeptical due to the huge change made to touring bikes. Yamaha revealed that the bike was going to come with an air-cooled V-twin engine instead of V4 engines. At this point, you should know that, despite the initial slow sales due to concerns, the change was soon accepted and even revered. Besides the higher power and lower torque it provided, the unique engine also allowed the improvement of the chassis design of the bike. The smaller size of the engine allowed it to fit lower in the chassis than a V4 would. The bike also got an external oil tank, which reduced and centralized the weight. And if we want to discuss the bike's features, Yamaha didn't hold back at all. The throttle, for instance, is electronic with 2 riding modes, touring for a smooth ride and sport for a sharper one. Then there's the separate electric motor called Sure Park that helps the bike move in sticky parking situations. There's also an endless list of connectivity features, entertainment and convenience options. Now, all these bikes are cool, but Yamaha really stole the show with the Tenere 700. This bike entered the market in 2019 and changed the narrative of adventure bikes forever. This beast on wheels came with a 689cc parallel twin engine, which powered the motorcycle through a 6-speed gearbox and chain drive to give off 53.8 kilowatts at 9,000 RPM. The USD telescopic forks were mounted as the front suspension and monoshock was used as the rear. With these features, no distance was too far or the road too rugged for the bike to ply. Although the Tenere was always a hit, recent models are even more versatile as they are fitted with incredible upgrades. Over the years, Yamaha has strengthened its hold in the motorbike industry. No one could have guessed that the company started out as a musical instrument factory. Those that pay attention to the musical sound produced by the Yamaha engines might have taken a guess, but they wouldn't have had the slightest idea that no one in the factory knew how to produce a bike when they started. Through a constant learning and relearning process, Yamaha has gotten to where it is now. So which of the Yamaha models do you love the most? Kindly let us know in the comments section. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to hit that like button, share and subscribe. You could also turn on notification bell to be one of the first to view our videos. See you in the next video.